Let's say you and I were running a marathon race. Well, roughly your eye level is about nearly 2 meters, depending on how tall you are, 2 meters from the surface to the ground. And so you're looking at a perspective from 2 meters in height to the finish line. Now imagine you and I were running against each other and literally our eyes were one centimeter from the ground. Yeah. We could not judge where to go. And so when people say, well, why don't you swim straight? Well, when swimmers, are looking, this far above the surface of the water, your perception and your depth perception is very, very difficult. People know drafting or slipstreaming from the automobile racing world and the cycling world, where, if you're in a peloton in a bike race in like Tour de France, you just sort of tuck behind the cyclist ahead of you. Or if you're in a car race, you tuck behind the car ahead of you, and it breaks the wind resistance. And water is a much heavier medium than air. And so you want that person ahead of you to be, quote, breaking the water. The water is actually literally moving forward and you're caught in their wake, which is helping you swim at their same speed with less exertion of energy. And so drafting is a major, major part of this event. Everybody will be drafting somebody at some point in this race. Ideally, you want to be swimming, depending on how fast you're going, somewhere between your hip and your knee. Quite often people say the best place to be is right behind you. I don't believe that's the case. We've seen through data that drafting off of the hips within that sort of breakwater or that wake of the swimmers is the best thing to do. And plus, if you're swimming directly behind someone in this murky water, you're going to have to lift up your head to see where that swimmer ahead of you is going, or you're going to have to slightly touch their toes. You slightly touch your toes and they're going to kick your hand very hard. That you don't want to have any physicality if you can avoid it. And that's a very good way to get the person ahead of you really upset, because the most savvy swimmers know around that turn buoy, they know exactly who's behind them. And all they have to do is slightly slow up a little bit. I mean, just a smidge, a tad. And all of a sudden, that person behind them is just clocked with a kick. This event is held right in the middle of the typhoon season. So it's almost guaranteed that at least the tropical storm, meaning heavy rains, will come during some portion of the Olympics. When heavy rains come, it actually it floods the sewage system. So not only do you have the regular sewage, but you also have an enormous amount of rainwater that's dumped. And unfortunately, the sewage system was created many decades ago as the population just started to boom. And so on occasion, the rainwater and the sewage overflows the sewage system. And therefore, the overflow goes into Odaiba Marine Park and Tokyo Bay. Now, the Japanese have known this, and their engineers are working very diligently to try to keep E. coli and other kind of harmful materials out of the bay. But in fact, it's an engineering impossibility. So in the case that a typhoon or tropical storm comes in the days leading up to the Tokyo Olympics, you're going to smell the venue, literally smell the venue. I always say open water swimming is like the combination of wrestling, water polo, distance pool swimming, marathon swimming, and chess. Whew, it's going to be hot. We're talking really hot. It's interesting that over a year ago, the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee made a decision to move the marathon run from Tokyo up north to Hokkaido. So because of the heat and humidity, anybody who's been in, the Mediterranean, South Miami, South Florida, many places in Asia, you know that in July and August, it can be hot, sticky, muggy, humid. You walk outside and your glasses fog up or you start to perspire almost immediately. Now expect those athletes will be doing the same thing with black, tight compression suits on. For women, they'll go, above the shoulders, down to the knees, black, tight compression suits, tech suits, we call them. So they're already overheating, and now they're enveloped in tight black as the sun is beating down on them. Their core body temperatures are going to skyrocket. Now, the marathon running community decided that was a little too dangerous, and they moved the marathon run from Tokyo way up north into Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island in Japan, in order to avoid the heat and humidity. Marathon swimmers are stuck in this murky bay water. The temperature will probably be between 30 and 31, 32 degrees Celsius. For those Americans who are more familiar with Fahrenheit, that's roughly between 86 and 88, 89 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to be roasting. Again, this is directly impacting the speed and the tactics and the strategy of all the swimmers.